Strangford Lough is Northern Ireland's spectacular inland sea, studded with islands, rocky outcrops and sheltered inlets. Strangford has drawn people to the area for over 9,000 years.
People were drawn to the area by the mild climate, the shelter, the shellfish. There was plenty of fish in the sea, but the land was good for farming, and so when people moved from being hunter-gatherers to farmers, it was a favoured spot, and the land that would have been covered in forest was gradually cleared, and we have this hedged farmland now.
Dotted everywhere around these shores are buildings and ruins left behind by previous generations, from medieval monks through to the flamboyant 20th century aristocrats. Lough dwellers throughout history have left a diverse architectural heritage on the shores of Strangford Lough.
There's an abundance of archaeological sites of all types around the lough, and it's really indicative of how people came in and exploited this area and how important the lough was as a means of communication.
Since prehistoric times, people were drawn to the vantage point from Scrabo Hill at the top of the lough. Its name is derived from the Old Irish word scrabach, literally meaning scraggy hill. Scrabo Tower, built in 1858, presides over the surrounding landscape and can be seen for miles around. It owes its origins to the famine, as it was erected as a memorial to Charles William Stuart, 3rd Marquess of Londonderry, in recognition of his concern for the plight of his tenants during that terrible period.
Probably some of the earliest evidence we have around the lough. We have megalithic tombs, such as those at Audleystown and Millen Bay. At Scrabo we have Bronze Age hut circles in the environs of the golf course there, and the hill on which Scrabo Tower is set was originally a hill fort as well from the Iron Age period. So there are these discrete pieces of evidence for early activity around the shores.
Early Christian communities sought out a home on the lough. St. Patrick is reputed to have arrived through the entrance of the lough called the Narrows, and the whole area is steeped in Christian heritage.
One of the most famous visitors to this part of County Down was, of course, St. Patrick. We're actually filming at the Coyle River. Just a little downriver is the Slaney Burn, and one of the legends has it that St. Patrick, when he returned from France, landed at the Slaney, and he established his first church at Sol nearby. So this area is very significant for early Christian heritage.
The monastic site at Nandrum on Mahee Island can be dated to sometime between the 5th and 7th centuries AD. The ruins that stand on this elevated site tell of a time when life was very different on the lough.
The monastery itself, the earliest evidence we have here is from the 7th century. That would be the tide mill. It's been dendrodated to 619, and that's the earliest tide mill in the world. We also have this triple ringed enclosure here. You're standing in the centre here in the ruins of the church. This would be the Holy of Holies area. You have the burials and the round tower here. As you go into the next enclosure, there are the living areas for the monks where the scriptorians and workshops would have been. And outside that again would have been more agricultural. It was a place apart. It was an island. You're away from some of the temptations of secular life, and the enclosures reflect that as well. The idea was that everything you had for subsistence was within these walls, and that the monks didn't have to go too far outside them. In saying that, the lough would have been seen as a major means of communication all the way through history, from the earliest Mesolithic times right up to the monks here.
On the eastern shore of the lough stands the impressive ruin of Grey Abbey. This abbey was founded in 1193 by Lady Africa de Courcy, wife of John de Courcy, an Anglo-Norman invader, reputedly in thanksgiving for a safe landing after a perilous sea crossing. It was the first truly Gothic structure in Ireland. The landscape of the area has for centuries attracted aristocratic and influential families. and the shores of the loch are peppered with stately homes, castles and follies. Many of these were built by the Scottish settlers who came to Ireland in the 17th century and are fortified tower houses or castles built with defence in mind. One such family were the Wards, who established their home on the southern tip of the loch. They built the first house in 1610. It was a tower house, typical of those built by the Anglo-Irish at the time, and still stands in the farmyard on the estate. This was replaced in the 1760s by the present house, a grand affair with a rather unusual design.
There's a 400-year-old history at Castle Ward of the Ward family, and their first family home would have been the clock tower in the farmyard. And then their second family home would have been the Queen Anne house, which was just a little bit removed from the clock tower. You can't see it today, but the foundations are still there. And that does kind of explain why the Lime Tree Walk and the temple and the ice house and Temple Water are all in that area, all the different follies. And then where we are filming today is Castle Ward House. I'm standing in the main hall of Castle Ward House, and Castle Ward is very different because it has two entirely different, architecturally different facades. The front side just facing me is the classical facade, but the other side of Castle Ward is the Gothic style, and both inside and out the design has been replicated throughout the house. And there's quite a lovely story that goes along with it, because the story goes that Bernard Ward and his wife didn't agree on the style of the house that they were going to build, and she wanted Gothic and he wanted classical, and so they decided to compromise, and they built the house in this beautiful design.
Perhaps the most spectacular of all the historical residences in the area is Mount Stewart, home to the Marquesses of Londonderry for over 2 centuries. While the house itself is noteworthy, what attracts most interest are the exquisite gardens created in the 1920s and 30s by Edith, the Marchioness of Londonderry. Lady Edith's vision led to the creation of gardens that are renowned worldwide, attracting visitors even to this day.
Well, for me, Mount Stewart has everything. It has, everything a gardener would love to see. A variety of plants, some of which just stop you in your tracks. You've never seen them before, and they're cheek bajal to sort of ordinary, common garden things, all done with a bit of flair and flamboyance. And then the pleasure grounds, again, knock you out just for their tranquility and beauty. And again, there's a plant collection pretty much second to none. So if you love plants, it's the place to come. The gardens are fabulous, but there's also an 18th century landscape at Mount Stewart, and if you got to the Temple of the Wind, you get this fantastic panoramic view of the islands and the loch and right up to Scrabo Tower, and it's fabulous. It's just a beautiful framed, picturesque view from there. And the actual temple itself is probably the best garden building in Ireland. If you get inside and look at it, and then look out the windows, especially from the top, it's just sumptuous.
The impressive views allow visitors to look down on the loch, enjoying the same serenity and connection with nature that has compelled people to leave their architectural marks on the shores of Strangford over thousands of years.